What's up, guys? We are live. We got Shaun Attwood joining us. I'm really excited for this interview. Long time in the making, and I'm personally a fan of Shaun. Like, he has a crazy ass life story. One of my buddies, David, turned me on to one of his podcasts. It was actually the podcast you did with Kyle, right? The Kyle GSP guy.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
Yeah, I was listening to that. Also, another YouTuber who also, well, I guess you weren't a YouTuber when you went to jail, but Kyle was, and his jail story was also like pretty nuts, but yours was way more nuts. So I thought this would be a very interesting podcast. Have you on, have you share your life story. I think everyone's going to get a lot of entertainment and value out of this, and I think there might be some good life lessons here as well. So without further ado, thank you so much for coming on, Shaun.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on, Alex, and huge, congratulations on your success. And I was just listening to some of your stuff today, actually. That call in about the dirty talk, that was interesting. And
Cool.
I think the world needs more channels like yours, because when sex stuff is brushed under the carpet, it leads to abnormalities in society and a lot of crime. People need to be way more open-minded, and it seems that you're at the forefront of that. So I salute you.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, I think that a lot of issues can be boiled down to sexual repression and just like people not getting laid. Like, I think like school shootings, for example, could almost entirely go away if those guys were getting laid. Like, I think like it's never the guy that's getting a lot of pussy that's shooting up the school. It's the guy that's like, socially isolated.
Yeah, I interviewed one of those guys from prison as well, and he was getting bullied like crazy. They set fire to him and everything, and it was a very harrowing story. Yeah.
But let's start off with your upbringing. So what was you mentioned? I've heard you mention in other interviews you were kind of like the kind of like a little bit on the nerdy side. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I was one of the shortest in my year group. I didn't grow till later on in my teenage years.
Me too, dude. Yeah.
I got beat up by the rugby players, and I was hiding out in the technical drawing room so they wouldn't beat me up during the breaks. But I was interested in the stock market unnaturally at this young age. And the economics teacher, started to give me classes of my own. I borrowed some money off my nan and doubled it right away. And that was it then. I just set my sights on going to America, conquering the stock market, and becoming a millionaire by the age of 30.
Mm-hmm. Was experiencing the Arizona jail system also part of the plan?
No, it wasn't not my brightest idea to break the law in Arizona, where Sheriff Joe Arpaio was running the jail system. The Aryan Brotherhood prison gang decide who lives and dies if you're a white guy. And there was some unforeseen consequences of my actions.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I mean, at least you didn't get like life in prison. I was listening to your story and how like it could have easily gone down that road, with like, which kind of it highlights one of the sad realities of the justice system, is that it's a big standard whether you have money or not. If you don't have money, you will do a lot more time than if you do. Would you say that's correct?
I'd still be in there if I didn't have money.
Yeah.
I was facing 200 years. My parents remortgaged the house, come up with 100 grand. We got this lawyer recommended to us by the New Mexican Mafia, who I had a relationship with before the SWAT team came. And thanks to him, I got my sentence down to 9.5 years.
Yeah. One of my really good buddies, actually, he was selling drugs on Silk Road when Silk Road was popular. And he was like, he wasn't selling anything like crazy. He was selling more like psychedelics and stuff like that. He was also like, like we call him like an ethical drug dealer, like, drug dealers who won't like venture into heroin and meth. Like, they don't get into like the stuff that really fucks you up, like the more minute drugs. But he got caught with like a shitload of drugs. Like, we're talking pounds and pounds. And he got away with probation, and that's just because he got like the fanciest lawyer, and they fought it like crazy. But like anyone else, like if he didn't have money, he would have been still in jail by now.
Yeah, there's one system for the people with money, and the justice system preys off the poorest people, and they're fodder for the system, because every person who's arrested, it's $60,000 a year of taxpayers' money per person goes right to the prison. And that's why you've got the prison industrial complex and these contracts right now, tens of billions a year. And those prison companies, they pay off the politicians. Doesn't matter which party wins. The political contributions are in the tens of millions a year right now. So they keep these contracts rolling. And that's just one industry. There's hundreds of parasitic industries profiting off the slave labor, all the contracts, the phone calls, the razor wire, you name it. There's hundreds of them, and it's just this massive industry, and the war on drugs feeds it.
Yeah, I like what you said about how like the politicians look at the people who use drugs as like the suckers, right? Like you're the suckers because in the end we're gonna get you, and then we're gonna make a shitload of money off you. So you think you're like kind of going around the system, but actually you're the one that's being fucked.
Yeah, Corrections Corporation of America were boasting in the annual report to their shareholders that their profit growth was guaranteed because they keep coming back. They're not correcting people; they're breaking them. So by allowing it to be drug and gang infested mayhem, which is what it was where I was at, and when these guys get released, they give them $50, say have a nice day. They're getting out, they're covered in Nazi tattoos, they've got a heroin addiction. The majority will end up injecting heroin in there. They don't stand a chance, but they come right back. As soon as they come right back, $60,000 to the jail.
Yeah. But let's kind of jump back a little bit. So how did you go from being a young and upcoming stockbroker living in Arizona to being one of the largest ecstasy dealers? What was that like?
So it was a gradual thing. And I arrived in Arizona, I think it was like 1991. If you've seen that movie Wolf of Wall Street, I started out in an outfit like that in the beginning. And then 5 years in, I was the top guy in the office, making $500,000 a year in commissions. And I decided to just quit that lifestyle, invested it into technology shares, which went crazy during the dot-com bubble. Money goes to my head. I'm worth a couple of million at this point. I start to throw rave parties for up to 10,000 people at a time with it. Ecstasy is scarce. I see an arbitrage opportunity. In the beginning, I'm getting it from the local dealers. Then I'm getting it from LA dealers. Then I'm getting it from Holland. And at the peak of it, you know, my smugglers are bringing in 30, 40,000 pills at a time. By now, I've got operations in Mexico. We're smuggling it in through Mexico across the Arizona border, you know, flying it over from Europe to Mexico City to Hermosillo. And then I've got property in Puerto Penasco, Rocky Point. We switched the pills up into like a student-looking vehicle, like an SUV, ASU stickers on it, scuba diving tanks. And then it just hits the border like that.
What would you say was the main motivator for you? Was it the like the girls? Was it the power? What would you say was the main thing that was driving you?
Well, this does definitely tie into your channel because when I was growing up in my chemical manufacturing town in the northwest of England, you know, I'm just a normal person. I'm not standing out. When my aunt flew me to America as a teenager, changes my date of birth in my passport so that I can go nightclubbing. I'm only 16. You got to be 21 in Arizona. And she's introduced me to all these beautiful American women as Paul McCartney's nephew. And I'm getting all this attention all night long. You know, I've never had this before in my life. And I'm thinking, right, when I finish university, I want some of this. I'm gonna move to Arizona. So yeah, you know, the nookie was a huge part of it. You're testosterone charged. You're in your 20s. You're the man. You're throwing a rave party for 10,000 people. You're in the VIP area. You've got your bouncers, your security guys armed to the teeth. And then you've got beautiful women coming up to you all night long, thanking you. And it ties right into the striptease industry as well, because the people of the night, the drug people, the dealers especially, that are usually the men, and they start dating the women from the striptease community. You know, once they finish their jobs, they come and chill out with us, and we end up then, you know, flooding the strip clubs with the drugs. They're selling the pills for us, and then the after parties are just completely wild because everybody who's working for us, you know, we just go absolutely. We rent out like the Scottsdale Hilton Villa. It's got a jacuzzi on the balcony. Go bedroom this side, massive room in the. I'm hearing like loads of noise in the background. Is it possible to cut that out?
Oh yeah, Mom, can you knock out the voice? My family's in town. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No worries. So we got the Scottsdale Hilton Villas. You know, massive room in the middle, like DJ Kyoki, DJ Hot Wheels, and people going around naked on like roller skates, striptease women putting wax on each other, just all kinds of craziness just went on at the after parties. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Was it basically like a giant orgy, like going on? Like, I remember.
No, it wasn't an orgy, and we were very protective of all the women that we were with. So, but there was certain, like, there was one woman that was with us. And we called her Turbo Dyke. So any party that we went to, she'd be like, "Doesn't matter who you guys want to get with, I'm going to beat you to it." And she had a thing whereby she was a bit of an exhibitionist, let's say.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I was reading the Wolf of Wall Street. Like Jordan Belfort was talking about how like there was one party in Vegas where it was like they walk in and there's just like everybody's banging everybody and there's like puke everywhere and the cop walks in and he's like, "Mr. Belfort, I don't know if you want to walk in there." So it's kind of like the scene I'm imagining.
There's always somebody so out of it, they're puking or flopping on the floor like a fish, and we'd take it in turns. One person would have to be responsible, the babysitter. Where everybody else would be just behaving outrageously.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see like the woman being a huge motivator. I can tell you with me personally, like getting laid was a huge driver. Like we have somewhat of a similar background, kind of like a little bit nerdy growing up, social anxiety, not really that socially accepted. Mine was a little bit different just because we moved to America when I was younger. So my English, I had an accent and I just didn't really fit in with the super American culture I was thrust into. But not getting laid like when you're younger, and then just like that being a big factor. That's what got me doing everything, like really initially going to the gym, starting a YouTube channel. Like everything was at the end boiled down to, can this get me laid? So I can see like the selling ecstasy route being like way more effective, because obviously like a lot of the chicks, you have so much power in that situation because basically you hold the keys to their happiness.
Well, that's it. I mean, even the guys are coming up to you all night long as well, just saying thanks for the pills, thanks for the party. So my ego ended up as big as the Grand Canyon. You're running around with your security guys, and you just sadly though, there's a trajectory for these stories. If you've watched Below, if you've watched Scarface, if you've watched Goodfellas, there's the glitz, the glamour, the drugs, the partying, the women at the beginning. And then there's this arc whereby the competition come in, the heavy mob, in my case, Sammy the Bull's crew. And then the feds come in. The feds started driving by our parties, filming license plates, trying to infiltrate us, trying to set up, phony deals. And then there's the consequences whereby you end up in hell on earth, which was Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail system, locked up abroad. Nat Geo did my episode, Raving Arizona, and they researched it. 62 people died in that jail around the time I was there over a 5-year period, making it the highest rate of death out of any jail or prison in America. So Arpaio, he really was the architect of this house of horrors.
Jeez. Yeah. What was his deal? He was just like some like hard ass dude who was just like, fuck these guys, we're gonna like punish them, or like why did he set it up to be so bad?
Well, if you want to go Freudian on him as well, when he was getting born, his mother died giving birth to him. So my psychoanalysis is that he didn't have a proper maternal bond and lacked empathy and had psychopathy.
Okay. No, I mean, I can see that. I mean, there's definitely people who have psychopathy on both sides of the spectrum of law enforcement. There's people on the criminal side and on the law enforcement side. They just chose different paths. Let me ask you this. I was kind of curious about this. Do you think that if Sammy the Bull's crew didn't kind of bring heat on the scene, do you think he would have gotten caught? Or
it's a sucker's game. The drugs game, for everybody, it leads to the police, prison, or death. And Sammy the Bull's crew were actually arrested a couple of years before my crew. And I was like, thank you, police, for removing the competition. But all those resources, it was a multi-agency investigation that were on him, were then applied to me.
Yeah. So what was the ultimate factor of you getting caught? Was just people coming out testifying, like they got caught and they flipped on you? Was that basically it?
Yeah. Now, I quit the importation a year before I got caught, and the wiretap was set up during my quiet period. So they didn't catch me doing any transactions. They caught me doing personal use. And I thought I got away with it. But statute of limitations in Arizona is such that all it takes is someone from your past within a 7-year limit for drug transactions to tell the cops that they did a transaction with you and they've got you. So they had 10 witness statements, and that got the ball rolling for the wiretap and the grand jury indictment.
Yes, but they knew about you for a while, right? Like you said that like the guy who arrested you was like bragging, "We finally got English Shaun," right? So you were
Yeah.
kind of like on this like on their radar for a long time, right?
Yeah, they knew about me from very early on when I first started dabbling. That was when the beginning of the 10 witness statements commenced, about what, 97, and the SWAT team finally came May 16, 2002. But in my grand jury indictment, they said I moved around so much, I used so many aliases. That's why it took them so long to catch up with me.
Do you think, in hindsight, if you like could, I mean, I'm sure if you could go back, you just wouldn't do it. But let's say you could go, you only can travel back to the period where you're already dealing ecstasy, where you're a large dealer. Is there anything, do you think, that you could have done differently to avoid getting caught? Or you think there's just no way that you could be at that level and not get caught ultimately?
Yeah, I should have paid off the police and the politicians. That's
Fair
that's
enough.
how it really works. It's all massive deals
Uh-huh.
behind closed doors. America, points at like Mexico, Nigeria, countries like that, say they're the most corrupt in the world. But I've learned through people who were actually involved in massive drug transactions. One of my best mates was a former pilot for the Sinaloa cartel. He was an American guy. How it actually works. It's massive deals, massive payoffs.
So the only way to really make it sustainable is to actually like make the people in charge your partners basically and give them a cut of the profit.
Yeah, and they wipe out your competition as well. So, for example, in Mexico, you got the Sinaloa cartel for a period of time under El Chapo is working with the Mexican government, but the Mexican government is getting paid billions from America to fight the war on drugs. So they're launching wars against the rival cartels to El Chapo for a period of time until El Chapo is no longer of any use to them. Then they hand him over to the Americans. So the money really flows to the politicians, the heads of the army, heads of the police. The cartel bosses come and go. They're like just the figureheads in the war on drugs. But actually, the long term profits goes to the politicians and the heads of the various bureaucracies. That's how it works.
Okay, gotcha. On a
Yeah.
different note, also wanted to ask. So you were when you were at like your peak, you married a what was she, like a lesbian porn star or bi? Like she was doing lesbian porn, right? Your wife?
She was doing lesbian internet porn when I met her. Yeah, she was a very bright woman. She had a degree from university, but she was wild as hell.
Was that in hindsight? Were you like, like nowadays, where you're like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to marry like a woman like that, or was it like still like, well, what are your thoughts in hindsight, like on that relationship?
So there's been various campaigns against me in recent years. I've lost my YouTube channel twice, and
Oh shit, I'm sorry to hear about that. Yeah, that's
yeah. So I've got to be very careful what I say. So when I was a young man, high testosterone charged, and obviously there was some appeal of being with a frisky woman, and the boundaries that she set was that she would bring women into our relationship, and that the woman that she brought in was allowed to give me oral sex and give her oral sex, but it had to end at that, and then we would have full sex. So that was our foreplay. That was the boundary she set.
women and their rules.
And who am I to get in the way of her desires?
Right. Okay. Interesting. How did you meet her initially? Like, how was the initial
Yeah.
meeting?
So I got together with a striptease woman out of Tucson. Her name was, what was it? Pepper. Yeah, Pepper. She was very exotic Asian woman. And I was just talking to her one time. We were on ecstasy at a rave at the Ice House in Arizona. And she said to me, next week at the rave, I'm going to bring a woman you're going to fall in love with. I said, cool, bring it on. And she did. She brought my future wife the following week. Yeah.
No, she delivered. Okay. Interesting. Overall, how easy would you say it is to like meet girls or get laid when you're like a drug kingpin? Like, is it like at that point, like, is it like in the movies where it's like so easy, where it's just like you're just like a king and the women are being brought to you, or what would you say is like you still need game at that point?
I think it's social proof, to be honest, because if you're like at the head of an ecstasy ring, for example, and you're throwing massive parties, and you know you're running shit, aren't you? And I think it's attractive for women to go with a guy who's running things. Well, you know, like women go after successful entrepreneurs and things like that. They find that attractive. So I think it's just part and parcel. And also, what I had going for me was, I'm a stranger in a foreign land. I've got the English accent,
Right.
and you know, on drugs. Even though I was this shy nerd from, you know, as a teenager, on drugs I was the most insane party person in the world. So I've got, you know, I'm a successful entrepreneur, wild and crazy rock star, drug fueled behavior, and the English accent. So I credit all of those three things with helping me with the female population.
The trifecta of getting laid. The English accent, the drug empire, and the success. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was quite the life while it lasted. Okay, so let's fast forward. So then you get you get you know, police raid your house. They indict you. At this point, you probably think that like it's all in the past because you haven't been actively involved in the scene for like over a year, right? So at this point, are you thinking like, oh, like I got away with it, right?
Totally. I was stock market trading on my computer one morning, and then bam, 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 bam on the door. Jump up, look through the peephole, it's blacked out. Go, you know, look out the window, the whole complex is completely surrounded. Oh, shit. Go to the bedroom, talk to my girlfriend. All right, we better let him in. Walking through the living room, then just boom, door just flies off the hinges. Hands above your heads, get on the ground now, don't fucking move. And you see him open up with those guns. You see the eyes behind the visors, the intensity of the look on the faces. You know if they open up on you.
Oh yeah, cops always take things way too seriously. It's like an old lady jaywalking. Get on the ground, bitch.
Yeah, but you can
I
see.
forgot my medication. Don't fucking move.
It's like probably a split second you've got to look at them before you drop to the floor, but it's like elongated in time. Something goes through your brain, and you can see in their eyes that if they just they could just pull that trigger right now and your life's over in seconds. You're like, get down. Yeah, scary.
Damn, yeah, I can imagine. And guys, for anyone who's watching, I know we're skipping, if you guys are fans of Shaun's, we're skipping parts of his story. The reason is I just don't want to make Shaun tell his full life story, which he's done so many podcasts.
It's a trilogy,
Yeah.
Alex, and the audio books are 30 hours long.
Wow. Okay. I'm definitely gonna give those a listen. I've mainly been watching your podcast, but guys, if you like, there's a lot more to the story. There's a lot of really funny stories. So there's this guy named Wildman, and he's a character of his own. That's like a podcast in of itself. Yeah, just check out Shaun's other podcasts where he talks about more in detail about these various aspects. Because like it's basically like, think of it as a Lord of the Rings trilogy, and right now we're jumping from the first movie to the second movie, and we completely forgot about like Gandalf and shit, right? So there's key parts of the story that are being skipped, but that's deliberate because otherwise this would be a 10-hour podcast and we wouldn't even have time for Q&A because there's a lot to the story, a lot. But yeah, so we're kind of skipping ahead. But so okay, so you get arrested. Then you're having so then there's an issue. The prosecutor is playing a lot of games, right? Like the prosecutor is really trying to fuck you over. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So in the beginning, the first group of us, 13 of us, were arrested, including Wildman, my best friend from childhood, who you just mentioned, who died just over a year ago, sadly.
Yeah, sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, he was my co-host on my podcast. He was doing really well, and right away they put a do not house together on me and Wildman, so we couldn't be housed together. We did manage to see each other in Catholic mass and church on the street, and the Italian Mafia guys we clicked up with, they had the guards bring him into my building, things like that. But the prosecutor, she thought that me and Wildman were trying to influence the co-defendants into not signing plea bargains. So there was various dirty tricks were played, because when Sammy the Bull's crew arrested, there was 57 co-defendants, and they all agreed to cooperate right away. In my case, there was over 100 co-defendants arrested in various groups, and nobody was agreeing to cooperate. We were such a tight-knit community. We bonded, and I think I fought the case for 26 months, and over the 26 months, by the end of it, only 4 people had agreed to cooperate. So bear in mind, they didn't have me talking about any big drug transactions. They've only got 4 cooperating witnesses that would agree to, actually speak on the stand. So they had quite a weak case, and my lawyer said they'd missed the boat. So the prosecutor pulled out every single dirty trick in the book to try and break me down psychologically. I asked for a bail reduction. The bond got doubled to 1.5 million. I was moved over to maximum security. I didn't know anyone after a year. They doubled my charges after the first year. So in the beginning, I had 10 charges in serious drug offender status. Serious drug offender status carries 25 to life. 10 charges carried a maximum of 100 years if I went to trial and lost, and they stacked it. Second year, I'm looking at 20 plus charges plus serious drug offender status. So 200 plus years if I went to trial. And there was a guy before me actually had a similar case. He refused to sign a plea bargain for 15 years. He rolled the dice, went to trial. They gave him 200. They stacked all his charges. Prosecutor said, we're going to do this to Attwood next. So I held out for as long as possible. I think I was probably the last man standing, actually. I never cooperated. Prosecutor totally had it in for me. But fortunately, this lawyer that was referred to us by the New Mexican Mafia, he was a loophole lawyer, and he got it inserted in my plea bargain. I agreed to be banned for life from America. And as a first-time non-violent drug offender who was not a US citizen, I got this loophole whereby I only had to serve 50% of the balance of my sentence after I was out of the pre-sentence period. So my sentences were divided into 3 sentences. I had the 26 months on remand, and then I had 2 concurrent sentences that ran to the 9.5 years, and I got 50% on them. So the amount I actually served was 5 3/4 years. And getting sentenced to 9.5 years was one of the happiest days of my life, because when you're facing 200, you think you're never going to get your life back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think moving you to maximum security prison is like insanity, because like maximum security is for like the hardened, like of the hardest, like the people who are like killing people and shit, and like you're like pretty much like a white collar guy. To the extent of it. So like there's a good chance that if like me, I'm not saying just you, like me and you, like if one of us goes to maximum security prison, we're not getting out. You mentioned that you got really lucky that you had connections, but do you think if it wasn't for the fact, kind of skipping ahead again, but if you didn't have those connections with the New Mexico Mafia, and you didn't get, that whatever 3 Tonys or 2 Tonys guy, like if you didn't have those connections, do you think you would have survived prison, honestly, Supermax?
All right, so the New Mexican Mafia, they schooled me in police etiquette before I got arrested. They were like, if you ever get pulled over, just tell the cop you're in a hurry. If there's no probable cause, don't let them search your car. If there's any major trouble, here's the lawyer you need to use. So that help definitely was massive, getting that lawyer. Now, once you go in the jail, it's all divided racially. So I can't click up with the Chicanos in the jail, and I did actually start working out with a Chicano, and I got in trouble for it.
What's a Chicano? You have to elaborate on that.
All right, so you've got 4 major gangs in the Arizona state jail system. You've got the whites, the blacks, the Mexicans, the Mexican Americans. White gang is the Aryan Brotherhood. The black gang is the Mau Mau. The Mexican Nationals gang, they're like the Paisas, the Border Brothers. Then you've got the Chicanos, who are the Mexican Americans. So if they're descended from Mexico but born in America, you're a Chicano or a Chicana. Chicana if it's a female. And oddly enough, the Chicanos were at war with the Paisas. If they'd have teamed up, they would have been the biggest gang. Yeah, so that's how it all breaks down racially. So if you've got like these street gangs, like 9th Street Crips versus 29th Avenue Bloods, but they're the same race, like say they're black, then the gang leader says to them as soon as they come in, whatever beef you guys are squashed, you stand with us now. You got to represent your race. Yeah, so I can't just kick it with the Chicanos. And I learned that early on because I was working out with this guy called Sniper. He was a La Victoria gang member out of Tempe, Arizona. And then the Nazis come out the cell and they walk up to me and they say, "Hey, Wood, can we have a word with you?" And I'm like, I look over at Sniper. He's like, "Yeah, go talk to your people." So I go in the cell with them and like, "Look, Wood, look around the day room." I'm like, "Yep. Do you see any other the white boys working out with the other races?" I'm like, "Nope." Like, you got a lot to learn, Wood. Like, now go finish your workout. That was last time I worked out with Sniper.
Jesus Christ. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, but then Wildman, Wildman's a good guy to get arrested with. So right away, he made his mark as a maniac, and people knew he was with me, even though he was in a different building. He was just really loud everywhere he went. He was mooning the guards, and if anyone said the wrong thing to him, he would just knock them out. So the gang members respected him right away. The Italian Mafia guys loved him. One of the Italian guys just contacted me after 20 years out the blue. Bruno, he was an enforcer for Little Italy in the building I was at, and I just did an interview with him on my channel. And man, what an amazing guy! And he was reminiscing about meeting Wildman for the first time in the Catholic Mass. We're all sat on the back row. Wildman sat on one side of me, and bear in mind, he's 6'2". He was 29 stone when he died, so that's like what, 400 pounds, something.
Jesus Christ!
And then Bruno, he's straight, looks like he's out The Sopranos. And these guys shake hands right over my body, and the power of them shaking hands almost knocks me out of my seat.
Damn.
Yeah. So once I was separated from Wildman after a year, you mentioned Two Tonys. So Two Tonys was Italian Mafia. He was a Bonanno crime family associate underneath Joe Bonanno Senior, who was the longest running ever, head of the Mafia Council of the 5 families. So he had a hell of a lot of stories, and he took me on his wing. I wrote his life story. It's a book called The Mafia Philosopher, Two Tonys. And I did get in some situations, but Two Tonys, he protected me from them.
Mm-hmm. But so I guess the initial question is, do you think if you didn't have all these like protection of like the Two Tonys guy and the Wildman, do you think you would have made it out of the Supermax like on your own? Like how, like let's say hypothetically speaking, when you were a drug kingpin, you were a complete lone wolf, even though that's not really possible. But let's say you were just Superman, you were dealing all drugs on your own, then you get arrested, you get 9 years or whatever, you serve 5, and you go to Supermax by yourself. Do you think that's something you would have been able to survive in all probabilities by yourself, or?
I personally think I would have got brutalized by the gang, because when I first went in, I had all these people with me. Some of my bodyguards ended up with me, and that enabled me to establish myself with the right people.
Mm.
And Bruno said on the interview I did with him, and the second one we just did, he said he could tell I was shit scared, but I carried myself well. And everyone is shit scared in there. It's all about how you carry yourself. And they saw I was an authentic person, because the day the Italian Mafia guys asked me to start working out with them was one of the happiest days of my life, because I knew I'd been, accepted by another group outside of my own group.
Mm-hmm.
And these group were formidable, because they'd taken over our building from the Aryan Brotherhood. They pushed those guys out.
Mm. Okay, so this kind of brings me to, so what are like the rules or the unspoken rules of prison? Like you mentioned, you carried yourself well. So what does that mean exactly?
So if you go in prison bragging about your crimes, for example, or how tough you are, and you hear guys all day long, I did all these robberies. I was running around Las Vegas with all these showgirls with $100 bills plastered to my forehead and all this bullshit that they just make up. If you go in there and you act like that, they're gonna humble you very fast. And it was a very humbling situation for myself. Like I said earlier, my ego was as big as the Grand Canyon. Drug fueled, I was a wild and crazy party person. But compared to what was going on in the jail, my drug use and my behavior was insignificant. The vast majority were injecting heroin and crystal meth.
Jesus.
The whole day revolved around getting the drugs in. You got guards bringing drugs in. You got visitors bringing drugs in. Now you got drones bringing drugs in. It's absolutely insane. So I tried to turn it into the education opportunity of a lifetime. Read over 1,000 books in just under 6 years. And people ask me for prison survival advice. Keep yourself to yourself. Don't go in there and brag about things. Make alliances with the right people. Work out. But you see people just falling afoul and getting wrecked, getting destroyed in there because they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the misconceptions is that if you're a drug user and you go to jail, like you're gonna have to sober up because there's no way to get drugs. But so you're saying that drug use is actually more rampant in prison than it is on the streets, basically, right?
I couldn't believe that society rounded up mostly drug users and put them in a place where there was the most drugs. But when you realize it's all about money, it makes sense. But it took me years to figure all that out.
So what are like some of the other like I guess like okay, like in the movies there's certain whatever perception people have of jail. What would you say is like the movies and what would you say is not like the movies based on your experience?
So you watch Prison Break,
Yeah.
and he gets arrested for robbing something, and his brother's on death row. You're not going to have a guy on death row housed with a guy who just did a little robbery.
Hmm.
You know, when I was in Supermax, it was because the prosecutor put my sentence down as 34 years on the paperwork. A life sentence is 25, so it's all lifers or shit-slingers. You know, people are extremely violent. People who kill people in prison. There's a whole run of shit-slingers, killers, gang leaders. Arizona Department of Corrections, by identifying the gang leaders through their tattoo schemes, rounded them up and put them all in SMU Florence. And I don't know if they're still in there, but they were in there for years and years. So these are all serious threats to the security institution that are in Supermax, where a death row would be. Not just an average, a bog standard robber would be in there, but characters like Teabag, Booty Bandits. Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, yeah. There's people like that. That's very real. So there's the Hollywoodization and the glamorization, but a lot of it is even the stereotypes. You know, they're based on real people.
One of the things that I heard you mention in the podcast, which kind of stood out to me, as it's really random, but it's one of the things I would never expect. So, you know, there's the joke, "Don't drop the soap in the shower," right? And it's like to me, it's like you would think that if I ever went to jail, I would just not shower for 5 years. I'd be like, I'll be the smelliest guy. I don't give a shit. I am not going in that fucking shower. But I heard you mention that like these guys in jail take hygiene like super seriously. That's like like you have to shower every day, like right? That's correct.
Oh my goodness, there was a massive Chicano who was sweating so much he was stinking, and the Chicano gang got together and they had a vote on what to do about him, whether to just beat him up and get rid of him. And in the end, they allowed him. He had to shower every couple of hours and put baby powder on his skin. Now it's 120 something degrees in the summer. This building has got hardly any fresh air coming in. There's a swamp cooler that barely works, and you're being cooked alive in a concrete oven. So a lot of us are just going around stinking like wet dogs. And especially in the summer, you got to shower so many hours after so many hours, otherwise you start stinking again. Your skin turns soggy from sweating constantly, but you're itching. You scratch yourself, and clumps of your skin just come off under your nails.
Damn. So if you don't shower, they basically beat the shit out of you. Is that correct?
Yeah, bad hygiene is one of the rules.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
that's so funny to me. It's like how like I guess the guys in jail, like it's almost like they have their own like code of conduct, right? And like like they're just the things that they put in that code of conduct, like good hygiene is like something you know, it's like something like you would expect a bunch of like really frisky people like to care about. Like you wouldn't expect like these hard prison guys to care about how another dude smells, right? But it seems like it's almost the opposite. They're like super sensitive to that. Like, yeah, homie, you gotta fucking shower. Like you get in the shower like right now.
Well, bear in mind the jail system where I was housed, the day room and the cells, two tiers of cells up and down, upstairs and downstairs. It was designed for 15 people, but due to the mass warehousing of people, they had 3 people in each cell. Sometimes they throw them out on the floor, have a 4th person. So if you're living in close quarters with people like that in a concrete oven, where everyone's just going to start stinking after so long, you know, it's a good thing that mandate is out there that you got to take a shower because you don't want someone's stinky ass in your face, you know, when they're climbing up to the bunk and stuff like that. Other rules: you can't sit with the other races, can't go talking to the guards that get you for snitching. You know, if anything pops off, you've got to represent with the race, got to, you know, working out with the race, things like that. Got to attend all the white boy meetings if they're voting on a new head of the race after a serious.
The white boy meeting.
Yeah. Yes. So say the head of the race gets moved out your building. There has to be a vote on who's the next head is. That's how the Italian Mafia got in. We all voted for their guy. That was the best we ever had it.
Okay, so that's okay. So there's a legit like every race gets together and they have like a vote for who's going to be like head. What kind of power does the head of the race have? Like, what kind of decision making do you get?
So the races are separate. They don't get. It's like just the white boys. This one race gets together, or the Chicanos they would get together separately. The races don't get together themselves. They're all kept very separate, and that's why they don't ever want like a race riot either. Because if there's a race riot, and I did experience one, then the jail gets locked down for days on end, which stops the drugs from getting smuggled in. So the absolute priority is to keep the drugs getting smuggled in at all times.
Yeah. Okay. And then, how true is it that like there's this idea that when you go to prison, someone's going to challenge you and you have to fight them? Like, is there what element of truth is there to that?
Yeah, that's called a heart check. So as soon as you go in, they're going to send someone to you to test you. And if you don't show heart, they're going to be lined up at your cell, taking everything you've got and renting you out as a prison prostitute.
Jesus Christ. So, okay, so if you ever get sent to prison, you have to fight to whoever challenged. So they're actually going to purposely set up someone to challenge you, and you basically just have to like fight back, right? Like fight back.
You've got to fight back. Even if you lose, you've got to fight back. You've got to show heart. As long as you show heart, you pass the test.
Did that happen to you? Did someone come up and challenge you?
Oh, yeah. I was at one prison once, and there's this big biker gang member guy, and he came up behind me. It was a chicken shit move, started kidney punching me. And everyone's watching. I turn around, start throwing some kicks and punches. It was like hitting a big bag of cement. He knocked me down. Guards came, but it's not like I started crying and ran to the guards.
Right. Okay. So if you fail that test, like what, you're going to be like basically gang raped, right?
Yeah. At the very least, they're going to take everything you've got. You're going to get punked out, and you could potentially get rented out as a prison prostitute.
Jesus Christ. Scary shit. So, boys, there's the lesson. If you ever go to jail, you got to fight back, because I don't think there's anything worse than being a prison prostitute. That's got to be like the lowest of the lowest. Like,
remember Shawshank? I could be a friend to you. The sisters.
Oh yeah. Andy has to fight back. Okay, so I guess there's like truth to that. Crazy shit. How? Okay, let me ask you this question. Kind of an odd question, but like, what percentage of the guys in jail are like banging each other? Like, is that like because you would think it's like a bunch of like macho guys, right? So it's like that's like I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they do some backwards rationalization, like that scene in Escape from Guantanamo Bay with Harold and Kumar. Like the guard is like, "I'm not gay. You're the gay one for sucking my dick," and it's like the logic makes no sense. So is it like that? Like, are the dudes like actually like whatever, these like tough dudes, are they actually like whatever, like banging these prison prostitutes, which are dudes, or that's like really like like rare or something like that? Like, I guess like the question is kind of going about this in a roundabout way, but how common is that like prison rape shit that you hear about?
So in my book Hard Time, it's my time in the jail, and I described all the gang stuff. So when I described the prison stuff, I didn't want to repeat all the gang stuff, and it blew my mind about all the sex in prison. So I think Prison Time is the first ever book to really describe all the sex that goes on in a men's prison. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on. So some examples are young people who get manipulated into becoming the prison prostitutes, getting turned out, and we have to go to a prison rape class to get taught how to avoid that. And in the prison rape class, they show a video of predators in the day room. Young prisoners are coming in, they're hungry. Some take food from the predators. Later on, the predator says, "Look, now you got to pay for that, or you're going to get stabbed up." "Well, I've got no money. I'm going to pay for that. We'll go in that room over there and do whatever that guy says." And once that person does that, then they've got them. That's when they get rented out as prison prostitutes. Then you've got people, trans prisoners. So I got lots of information from the trans prisoners, and one trans prisoner in particular said, "Look, it's the biggest, baddest, most homophobic dudes on the yard who are coming to me to get off."
I can see that.
Get the rocks off. Yeah. And they told me that I would be receiving oral sex after 5 years. That was normal. But I had a girlfriend visiting me. So I would just take that to the shower. I would go on a date. And what that means is you get like a plastic bag and you put a picture of your girl, a sexy picture of your girlfriend in it, and you got some tape and you tape it to the shower wall, and you just bang your bishop to that.
Okay, interesting.
And then you've got like couples, like people in cells together who've worked the system to have their boyfriend in the same cell.
Oh,
But
you can be in a cell with a girl? I didn't know that was possible.
you got your boyfriend in the same cell. You've worked the system, and then but people find out, and that gets spoiled. And some of those guys are gay for the stay, so they've got their wives and girlfriends visiting them, but they're going back to their boyfriend in the cell. But then when they get released from their prison sentence, they go back to their wives or girlfriends and ditch the boyfriend they had in prison because they were just gay for the stay.
What does that mean for this? Oh, gay for the stay. So they're like gay
Yeah,
while. Okay, so okay, that's interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Scary ass fucking shit. So okay, so in order to avoid that whole thing of like them like fucking making you a prison prostitute, is there more to it than just like standing up for yourself when someone challenges you, or is that like the main thing?
I think all physical threats, whether they're sexual or otherwise, the best way to avoid them is how you carry yourself. Body language is very important. Making alliances with the right people, having respectable charges, not having the kind of charges that are going to get you exploited.
Yes, okay, that's an interesting thing. I wanted so there's certain so yeah, there's like a hierarchy of charges, right? So what are the
Yeah,
charges that you don't want to have, like child molesters or anything else?
child molesters, KOS, kill on sight.
Jesus.
That's why they have to put them in their own prisons now. But you still get some flying undercover in general population. And there was a guy who was in my neighbor in the jail, and he was living with the head of the Mexican gang. He went to court one day, and it was on the news. It was reported on the little TV in the day room on the wall. He molested his niece, something like that. So they waited for the guard to do a security walk, and he got about 30 minutes before the next security walk, and they tortured him for the whole 30 minutes. And I was in the next door cell. It sounded like an animal being tortured, something like a cat on fire. I've never heard such sounds before in my life. And when he came out of that cell, he was covered in blood from head to toe, and he had just enough energy to pound on the plexiglass sliding door. And when that door opened, he collapsed, and the guards took him, and we never saw him again.
Jesus Christ. So like murder is common and they like the guards don't care about that. So like it sounds like just people are getting away with murder basically left and right.
I had videos on my channel of the guards murdering mentally ill prisoners in the jail. That jail had paid out 50 million in lawsuits, and the sheriff, he promoted some of the guards who were found guilty, who settlements were made against in court, who were responsible for those murders. Yeah, there's an incentive to murder people by the gangs and the guards. Get a promotion from the boss. If you're a gang member, you murder someone, get a promotion from the gang, get patched in by the Aryan Brotherhood. I had a video on my channel also taken down of an AB guy murdering another inmate who's refused to beat someone up for the gang. And for almost 10 minutes, he's just smashing this guy's head into the concrete and stomping on the back of his neck. This is the guard screen. They're supposed to be stopping any trouble. Where the hell are they? 20 minutes later, he's dead. So he brings the body up right in front of the security camera like he's trying to show it off. Tries to throw it off a balcony. Gets stuck on the rail. He starts kicking it over and over again. Only then do the guards come in and put this guy down. But because he hadn't murdered that guy in a blind spot, because he'd done it right in front of the camera, he got the death penalty. People can Google that as well. Peter Van Winkle, his name is.
Jeez. What do you ever see the movie Shot Caller with the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. How true is it that the scene where he like goes to jail and like the guy boss comes up to him and is like, "Hey man, like you gotta join a gang. Like I don't care if you want to or not. Is it true? Like you have to join a gang or you can stay out of a gang?"
All right. You come under control of the gang no matter what race you are. I'm sorry, whatever race you are, you come under the control of that gang.
Mm-hmm.
Remember all the gangs I broke down earlier?
Yeah.
They're not that very many members. To be an actual member of the AB, you've got to murder someone for them. There's probate, people under test conditions trying to rise up in the gang. But if you're a white boy, you come under control of the Aryan Brotherhood. They decide who lives and dies.
Okay, so you don't have to actually join the gang, but you have to like play by their rules, basically.
If I'd have said, that when they come to my cell and said, white boy meeting, cell 7, 5 minutes, if I'd have said, fuck you, I'm the head of the English gang, I ain't going your fucking white boy meeting, dude, I would have got my teeth knocked out.
Jesus Christ. I've said the word Jesus Christ more during this podcast than I've said during any other podcast. Okay. So, what would you think is kind of an odd question, but what do you think is the motivation for people to join like the gangs? Because it seems like, okay, if you don't have to do it, you can just stay under their control. Why would you join? Like, you get like a fucking Nazi tattoo on your head. Like, you can never get a job again. You're pretty much socially isolated. You have to kill someone, so there's a good chance you will get additional charges. Like, why would someone, if you don't have to, join the gang? What do you think is the motivation?
Status, ego, the benefits of being a shot caller, excitement, adrenaline. A lot of these kids, you know, they come out of they're off the streets, they're out of care homes, they're state raised, and it's indoctrinated into them from a very young age to aspire to be the head of the Aryan Brotherhood. You know,
Jesus Christ.
When someone tells stories about the head of the Aryan Brotherhood, you see these kids' eyes just widen. You know, this is like the equivalent of a rock star to them.
This guy's banging all the prison prostitutes. This guy gets all the prison prostitutes. I want to be like him when I grow up. Yeah, I mean that's fucking nuts. I also want to get into we're talking about this before the podcast started. Can you tell the Shit-slinger story? Because this shit is fucking hilarious. The Shit-slingers you encountered.
Oh man, so I didn't personally encounter them. I never got shit slang, but
thank God for that.
a friend of mine was on the work crew, the cleanup crew for the Shit-slingers. So it was him who told me all the stories. Now, in Supermax, you know, you might have a cellmate, you might not, but generally you're locked down all the time. The way that people settle disputes in men's prisons is through their fists. If you can't settle disputes through your fists, what you're going to do, you're going to weaponize crap. So a basic weaponization of crap would be shit on a chicken bone in a blowpipe, and someone goes past the window or, you know, the plexiglass or the door, some gap, or you've burnt a hole in it or something, and you dart that person and that bone gets into your bloodstream. And bear in mind, there's a lot of hepatitis and stuff in the prison. So your bloodstream transports that crap, possibly infected crap, throughout your body, and then you come down with hepatitis or something. The Shit-slingers, some of them concoct breweries of like piss and shit and leave it for days so like mold grows on it. But the Rambo of the Shit-slingers was a guy called Magnum. And Magnum wired up his whole cell with stuff like shampoo bottles and tubes, and he had like a bazooka where it would spray really. So anyway, the cleanup crew guy told me one day the guards came in, they'd had enough of Magnum. They cleaned up his entire cell. They got him naked and handcuffed behind his back or whatever it was. Got him naked, went in, took everything out of his cell, and put him in a dry cell. So he's in this dry cell completely naked. There's nothing in there at all he can make a weapon out of. And every now and then, you know, they come in and looking through the little slot on the window to see how he's doing. But they'd underestimated his resolve. So he shat on the floor, rolled over and mouthed it, and waited with it in his mouth until a guard did a security walk, popped his head right up opposite the guard, and went. And the guard was so taken by surprise, he raised his face up like that. So the shit went up his visor into his up his nostrils and near his eyes.
I mean, this is like pure insanity. This is like
This
is it's like you think that human civilization has come so far along, we're all like so civilized, and then you hear like this, like this is literally insanity. Like people fucking having breweries and all these concoctions of their own feces, and then fucking just so they can like fling it at the guards. I mean, this is like this is crazy. What did the guard do when that happened? Like, did he beat this guy up, or what did he do?
See, I don't know what the aftermath of that was, but typically when there's an assault on a guard, you can get additional charges. But like you pointed out, prison is the biggest house of the mentally ill. This guy was probably already off his rocker, maybe even doing a life sentence. So I have no idea what happened after that incident. But if it had been somewhere else and a random person had attacked the guard or spat on a guard or something like that, yeah, the guards would have took that person away beat the absolute living fucking daylights out of them, and then maybe 4-pointed them or 5-pointed them.
What does that mean? 4-point or 5-point?
So they strip you completely naked and they put you on a slab, and you just have to piss and shit where you lay, and you're just there for days.
Oh shit!
And in fact, that, you know, they've got you handcuffed down by each ankle and each wrist. But with 5-pointing, they can strap your head down as well. Or put a spit hood over your head, and they just leave you there. Yeah.
Damn. What about prison escapes? Is that like a thing that people are talking about, planning, or that's just like in the movies?
You know what? Someone did try and escape from Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. They were seen running down the street naked with the body all cut up by the razor wire in their pink boxer shorts, and they got rearrested. And in the Arizona Department of Corrections, some people escaped from that as well. I think they were serving long sentences, and it was a private prison. The alarm had gone off 200 times that month. They were too cheap to fix the alarm, so when it went off, they just thought, "Oh shit, the alarm's just gone off again." But guys had actually escaped, and they went on a murder spree. They were recaptured. But yeah, it does occasionally happen.
Did that thought ever cross your head, or were you just like, nah, I'm just gonna do my time and just like not fuck with that?
Not with my sentence, because I knew when I was going to get out, and they can shoot you dead if you try and escape, or they can add 5 to 10 years on your sentence. So didn't want to risk it.
Do you think overall, like, it's hard? Is it like really hard to escape from jail, or is it like something that's actually feasible if you have the resolve, for example?
The latter, because I had a guy on my podcast called David Macmillan, and if people want to watch this story, oh my God, my heart was thumping when he was telling it me. David Macmillan was the only Westerner to ever escape from death row in Thailand. And the resolve, the things he went through, how the stars had to align, and how he improvised, and the tools he made. It's about an hour long, the story, but holy shit, yeah. I mean, if you've got the intelligence, the will, if you're facing execution, perhaps that gives you the drive. David Macmillan, yeah, fantastic story.
Yeah, okay, I'll definitely have to check that out because I would think, okay, like to the person who's never been in jail or like never really done, like I guess never been to prison. I spent like an overnight in jail once, but that's totally different. Obviously, it's like you would think that like the only thing I guess if you're doing serious time that I would be focused on is like getting together with other guys. And it's like, okay, it's not like based on race. It's like us versus the guards, and like we gotta figure out a way to escape, right? Like if you're doing like your whole life, what do you have to lose at that point, right? But it seems like they're like the prisoners are getting sidetracked by all these like petty shit of like shit-slinging and banging prison prostitutes and like race wars, which feels like a whole like little distraction, which kind of makes sense why the guards would allow that, because it's like, yeah, let these guys have their little side distractions of race wars because they're staying in prison, right? Is it kind of like that? Like why do you think like people get sidetracked with all this nonsense when really the only thing that matters is like your quality of life and like whether you stay in or you get out? Like to me, it just seems so dumb to like get into a stupid petty squabble and add 10 years to your sentence over what? Like nothing really? Like, but it seems like that's not really the case.
It's divide and conquer, and the prisoners know that. You hear them talking about that sometimes, but they accept that there's all these rules of racial division. And it's like, you know, the racism of the last century that was remedied in some parts of America, it's never been remedied in the jail system. It's just continued. It's completely crazy. So they're all divided racially. They're all at each other's throats, and the absolute priority though is the drugs. So yeah, there's these distractions, but the main thing in prison is the drugs. Everyone's just concentrating on how to get the drugs in or how to get high. They're calling the family members, giving them sob stories as to why they need such and such an amount of money sent in, when really it's to pay for these drugs, but they're making something else up. And that's what creates the most violence in prison as well, is drug debts. And everywhere's flooded with spice now, so you got people wigging out, flopping on the floor like fish, attacking each other, attacking guards. And with the pandemic, conditions in prisons all over the world have gone crazy. You've got guards going around in spacesuits, according to the guys in Arizona, constant lockdowns, staff shortages. So you've had riots all over the world because of this. We just interviewed a guy who was in prison in Ecuador, and he had on a recent podcast, we broadcast on WhatsApp to the gang members in the Ecuador prison, and they'd had 3 riots that turned into massacres, and more than 100 people were killed on one day just during one of those events.
Mm.
So shit's just popping off all over the world. You've got prisons completely run and controlled by drug gangs. The violence is insane. You've got the pandemic making conditions worse. And yeah, I mean, this war on drugs, man, it's crazy, and people don't care about it until their kids end up in prison and they're getting a phone call saying, "Look, I just got arrested for drugs. I've got a cellmate with a padlock in a sock, threatening to kill me and rape me. Need some money for a lawyer." And that's when people wake up, when they get that call.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like super scary for sure. Uh, what's it called? Okay, so you do your okay, so your jail sentence is over, you get out, right? What is the transition like to just living a normal life after like fucking 7 years of ducking like shit
Woo!
slingers and fucking pimps and whatnot and whatever the fuck else kind of games they got going on in jail? Like you get out, you're in a normal environment again. Like what was that like?
Oh man, just walking down the street, being able to buy a banana was the heights of ecstasy for me. Hadn't had a banana in 6 years, and then my parents take me for Indian food, and it was almost like I was on ecstasy. But sadly, that doesn't last. You know, that feeling, the appreciation of life, and the miracle of just being free. I would say I've not gone back to where I was, taking everything for granted. I still do really appreciate the small things, but I credit incarceration with saving my life and teaching me these lessons. And there is a period of readjustment. So first, 5 years or so, I'm having flashbacks, nightmares, things like that. I do a lot of yoga, meditation, sports classes, and I credit all those with getting my head sorted out. Also talking to the school kids. Before the pandemic, I was doing over 100 talks a year across the country here to the school kids. It's down to about 20 now because of the lockdowns and stuff a year. But it's great because telling your story is cathartic, and the kids ask questions. They're always gripped, and it's part of your own healing process. You learn so much from them as well. So I feel really privileged, man, that I got released in December 2007, and people such as yourself and the school kids and people on YouTube and in the media, still so interested in my story after all these years.
Well, it's a pretty crazy story, man, especially because I think you're someone that a lot of people can relate to. Like I don't think I would be able to relate to like a neo-Nazi, talking about his life story, right? Because it's so unrelatable to me. It's like I can never see myself in that guy's shoes, but I can see
Yeah.
myself in your shoes if my life had gone differently. Like let's say, I got into like dealing drugs, right? Like I've done ecstasy before, and like it could have been like a little twist of like the whatever fate that could have I could foresee myself being in your shoes. It's like something that I think a lot of like middle class and upper middle class like people can relate to, because it's like, yeah, I could see potentially if things have gone differently, me winding up like this guy. And just like if I want, like, what would I do if I wound up in jail? I don't know. Like I'm pretty cool when it comes to like living in Miami and Brickell. In jail, I would probably, I don't know, like man, like I don't know how I would do. I'm not gonna like pretend that I would be like the tough guy in jail. I don't think so. I think this guy's way tougher than me there.
Yeah, a lot of people say that because I'm like the educated guy, British educated degree guy in this environment, surrounded by these hardcore criminals. And I also think the Sammy the Bull thing has created a lot of interest in it as well, because you may have seen his rise on YouTube.
Yeah.
One of your viewers just said he saw my Locked Up Abroad episode years ago, which was put out by National Geographic about 7 years ago. But hey, vital message, thanks for that. But National Geographic, I've just done another one. It's called Narco Wars: How E Busted the Bull, and it features my ecstasy ring versus Gravano's ecstasy ring. But what I learned from that was he wasn't even running his ecstasy ring. His involvement was he put some money in it. His son called him. The feds recorded the call. He put some money in it, and he didn't actually know what was going on at the street level. But when we were running around at the street level, the people who were working for the Gravano enterprise, were saying, yeah, one call to Sammy the Bull, we can have you taken out to the desert and all this kind of shit, trying to put the fear of God in us. But his son did try and kidnap me from a nightclub one time. He told me that story later on when I bumped into him in the jail.
Oh, he tried to kidnap you? Why did it
Yeah.
not? Why did it not go down? Did they just like mess up or something?
No, so I'm at the Crowbar, Central Phoenix, gay bar. The beef with the Gravano people on the street level is at its height, and a striptease dancer called it into the Gravanos. So that ecstasy ring, originally it was run by a guy called Mike Papa. He was like a steroid head jock, and he brought Gerard Gravano into the fold. And it was at the street level, it was Mike Papa and Gerard Gravano running it. The bull was just in his house. So it got called into Gerard Gravano that I was at the Crowbar. They jumped in a car, full on crew, armed to the teeth. They were going to take me out to the desert and either hold me for ransom or eliminate the competition.
Jeez.
And I was in there with Wildman, Wild Woman, a bunch of my people, G Dog, and I just got advised to leave the club. They said it just the vibe had changed. It got moody, and I was resisting as well, but we left, and those guys arrived just after we left.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of close calls. You said one time you showed up when the New Mexico Mafia was being busted. Like you were like, what, 10 minutes late or something like that, right?
That's the thing, Alex. I was with G-Dog going to his brother's house, and if we'd have got there 10 minutes early, we probably would have been in that raid. But all the federal SWAT team were bringing them out. I didn't even know those guys were the New Mexican Mafia until that night when it was headline news and all the mugshots said New Mexican Mafia, leaders of it in Arizona, most violent, dangerous criminal enterprise in Arizona. They tried to assassinate the head of the Department of Corrections, trying to assassinate judges, witnesses, cops, all kinds, and on and on and on it went. It was like, whoa. Yeah, so I've used all my 9 lives, basically.
Is that what got them busted? The fact that they tried to assassinate like the higher-ups? Or what was it that got them busted?
This is the thing, because when you are a drug trafficking organization and it gets to the murder level, then you're going over to the homicide department, and that's felony 1, isn't it? That's a priority for the feds and the state police. It's just to shut people down who are engaged in that kind of criminality. So, we were classified as a non-violent drug, organization. There was no violent crimes charged against me or my co-defendants. But once it, like the Mafia, when they're torturing people, the cartels, whacking people and shit like that, the cops are over that way more fast, unless they're being paid off. Unless they're being paid off, of course, or they're working for the cops in the first place.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. And you mentioned also kind of unrelated, but one time you were taken to that New Mexico Mafia house, right? And there was like a scene, there was someone being tortured or something like that, right?
Oh man, this was like the crossroads in my life where I was still a stockbroker, and I started out in ecstasy, and I got a call, and this guy was moving my pills. He said, "Look, I need you to come to the apartment and bring Wildman and Seth." Seth is dead as well now. He died about 4 years ago. He's a big guy. And I said, "Why? What's up?" Because I can't stay on the phone. So I go over there. Fish and his girlfriend answer the door. She's crying her eyes out. I think she's been raped, and they want Wildman to beat this guy up or something. And then I'm looking at them like, "What's up?" And they won't say anything. They're like stunned. And I hear this noise, like this crackling, like zzz, zzz. I'm like, "What is going on in that room?" They're like, "Well, you better go look." So I walk down into the room, and there was this guy who I knew from the New Mexico Mafia. He was an older guy, stately, swept back, grey hair, and he was talking in Spanish to a bunch of Mexicans who had cattle prods. And on the floor was a white guy with this rockabilly quiff. He was completely naked, hogtied. And when Alex gave the order, they electrocuted him, and he was pissing on the carpet basically every time they electrocuted him, and they had him gagged so he couldn't say anything. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm in shock. I've never seen anything that heavy before. And they're looking at me, see my reaction. So I know I can't let on that I'm shitting myself here. And I just said, "Look, hey, after observing it for a bit, I said, look, looks like you guys have got this under control. I've got to get back to my work. Yeah, I'll tell Wildman, it's under control." And I asked Fish what had happened. And Fish said, "That guy came, he bought drugs. He waited and watched my place until I left. And he robbed the place. He robbed your drugs. He robbed their drugs. I called you. I called them. They got here first." And then they held him. They said, "Look," they called his roommates and said, "Look, if you want him back, 10K. Otherwise, he's going out to the desert." And they paid the 10K.
Jeez. So they called you just simply because they were like they thought you were going to be the one that punishes the guy, basically?
No, they didn't call me. Fish called me.
Okay. The person. Okay.
Fish had been robbed.
Okay.
And he called the suppliers of his drugs to come and remedy the situation.
Right. Okay.
He called me. He called them. But they got there first, and they took control of the situation.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a good lesson not to rob drug dealers. That's Yeah, and I can get a little hairy. Those guys do not play by the rules, and they will just
Yeah,
torture you. Was that the most fucked up thing you've ever seen?
I think that was, yeah, before prison. Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably scare the shit out of me. The craziest thing I've ever seen was this is I've never really told this story publicly, but it's I guess somewhat amusing because it's pretty far removed. When I was a freshman in college, I was broke, and me and my friends we had a habit of like this is really fucked up. I'm not like proud of this at all. If I could go back, I wouldn't do this. But we would jump out of taxis, so we would take taxis and then we would jump out and not pay. Right? Again, like fucked up. You shouldn't do that. Yeah, I wish I could like repay those people. But anyway, so we used to do that, and I was hanging out like my freshman year of college. I was hanging out with like some people that were like a little bit more on the shady side, and like they were friends of friends, basically, right? We would go to parties. I wasn't like friends with them directly, and we jumped out of a taxi, and this taxi driver started chasing us. And which almost never happened. So we split ways, right? I went one way, and the two guys went another way. And fortunately, they chased after the two guys, right? And then that's basically all I saw. So then we reconvened later. We all got away, and I was like, "Hey, what happened? The taxi driver was going after you guys. How'd you guys get away?" They're like, "Yeah, man, it wasn't just a taxi driver. It was also an off-duty cop. Saw this whole thing and started chasing us."
Oh,
I was
shit.
like, "Oh shit, the off-duty cop! Like, how the fuck did you guys get away?" He's like, "Well, like the off-duty cop caught up to me, and I turned around and punched him in the face. He got knocked out, and then we got away." And I was like, "Holy fucking shit!" Like when I heard like that a cop got punched in the face and got knocked out, and they're like, "Yeah, he was trying to grab for his gun, so I had to like knock him out." I was like, "Holy fucking shit!" Like that was the last time I hung out with those guys. I was like, "This is like too serious for me." Like if cops are getting punched in the
Yeah.
face, I don't want to have anything to do with this scene. But that's like nothing compared to that story of like someone being like fucking tortured and cattle prodded. That's insane.
Well, in that same apartment complex where that happened, which was Rancho Murrieta, Tempe, Arizona, there was another situation whereby my main guy, who was a brother of the New Mexican Mafia guys, G Dog was one of my bodyguards. He was a Chicano. I was talking to him. I was just getting to know him really, and he was supplying the coke and the weed. I was supplying the ecstasy at a party, and a cop walks in, and he's like, "I can smell weed from outside. Nobody move." And I'm thinking, "Oh, we're all about to get arrested here." He goes to grab his radio. G Dog just whips out a gun, points at the cop's face, says, "The only one who's not leaving is you, motherfucker. Everyone run." So we all ran off into the night, and that whole complex, honestly, they had the helicopter out. Cops were going door to door, but G Dog schooled us. We ran off into an apartment. He followed us, came in, said, "Turn the lights off, turn the TV off, don't answer the door. They can't get a warrant that fast. Just everyone just shut the fuck up," because we were all panicking and crapping ourselves, discussing whether to flush our drugs. And after hours, it calmed down. I took him to a place in Phoenix, Arizona, where I had a house, versus Tempe, where he was hot. And at the end of the night, he was like, "Thanks, Shaun. You and your friends had my back, so me and my brothers have got your back." That's how I got in with those guys.
I had a question about that story. How did the G
Yeah.
Dog guy get away? So did he like handcuff the cop and then he ran away? Like, because how did he? Okay, I understand he holds the gun. You guys get away, but how does he get away? Right? How does
All
he
right,
get the?
all
Yeah.
right. I'll run it down. That's what happened was we're all in this apartment party, just chilling out. People smoking weed, on ecstasy, listening to rave music. I'm talking to G Dog, and this cop just walks right in. So as he goes to grab his radio, G Dog just pulls the gun out and he says, "The only one who's not leaving is you, motherfucker. Everybody run." At that moment, there was a stampede. There was a fucking stampede out of that apartment. Now, we had multiple apartments in that complex that we were operating out of. So I went to Fish's apartment, I believe it was again. And he was living with Seth at the time, who was one of my bodyguards. And Fish and his girlfriend were in there, and Seth and a couple of other people. So we ended up just like hunkering down in there. Now, as far as we were aware at that point, we were just away from the situation. We had no idea what happened with G Dog and the cop. We didn't get to stick around to see that. There was just a huge human stampede as soon as G Dog said, "Everybody run." So it was about, I don't know how many minutes later, when it was like bang, 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 bang on the door. And we opened it, and it was on the French windows, and it was G Dog. He's like, "Let me in," and we let him in. So I just assumed, he held the cop. Don't know whether he tied him up or what he did, or just told him, "Don't fuck, you come after me, I'll shoot you," and he took off. But next time I speak to G-Dog, I will ask him that.
Yeah, because that's the part I was curious about. Because like,
yeah,
he
good
must have
point.
like done something. Because why would the cop just not go after him the minute he pulls the gun down? So he must
I
have like
think
disarmed the cop.
if I've had a gun pulled on me, and you're not going to be inclined to just to run after someone with a
Sure.
gun, no
Yeah.
matter how brave you think you are. When it comes down to it, you're not just going to be like, all right, well, I'm just going to single-handedly run after that guy now who just put a gun in my face.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he must have like taken the gun because the cop could like reach for his gun, so he must have disarmed the cop because they have guns, right? So you gotta take the gun away from the cop. I'm assuming, right?
I have no idea, but I will ask him.
Yeah, I was listening to that story. I was trying to like figure out the logistics of it. I was like, okay, like where did yeah? I've also had a gun pulled on me once, and it's scary as fuck. It was by my roommate who was a meth head, and he was insane. He thought I stole $100 from him, and he got into his mind that somehow I stole $100 from him, which I didn't. And it got to the point where he pulled a gun on me, and that's like one of the scariest moments of my life. When you have a gun pulled on you, your whole life just freezes. Everything goes into slow motion.
Yes.
Yeah, it's scary as fuck. All right, let's take some questions from the audience because we got quite a few. Do you see future generations changing how the prison system works in the U.S. more to rehabilitation, or in the system so corrupt that will take a doomsday scenario for any change to happen? That's a good question.
Thanks to the internet now, we've got the activist army exposing what's going on. We've got all these people exposing the war on drugs, some great people around the world. And if you look at where the lowest crime and reoffending is, it's in Scandinavia. They put serious criminals behind bars. They're not doing 1 million arrests a year for weed possession like happened at the peak of the war on drugs in America. Lowest hanging fruit to fill the private prisons. And I think the American public's sick of it. That's why at the state level, they voted to legalize and decriminalize weed, because that was the biggest arrest category. And it's insane to throw a kid for weed in a prison where they're going to become a Nazi and a heroin addict and have a criminal record. But they are clients for life then for the private, prisons. So yeah, the public's woken up to it. And I think a lot of that is to do with internet activism. Because when I asked the guard before, my blog that exposed this shit was called John's Jail Journal. It's still up there if people want to see it. The original blog entries from back in 2003, 2004, I think it was. But I asked the guard, the motivation to do the blog was, the guard said to me when I said, how on earth do you get away with these things? Dead rats in the food, cockroaches all over us at night, guards murdering mentally ill prisoners. The guard said the world has no idea what's going on in here, and the public doesn't give a shit about prisoners. And they don't give a shit about them because before then, the controlled media was like prisoners are serial killers, Hannibal Lecters, rapists, pedophiles. And on the other side, how easy they got it, So they kept the public hating on the prison population. But once I got in, I saw the average arrest was like a black kid, a Mexican kid with a bit of weed, getting like a 25-year sentence.
Super sad,
because they had prior convictions. It was the biggest house of the mentally ill. And half my friends in prison were soldiers, come back from wars, PTSD, didn't get any help, street medicated on street drugs, and ended up in prison. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, dude, that whole thing is nuts. And obviously I grew up upper middle class, as I'm sure a lot of my viewers know, so I never really had that. But I have seen small elements of it, like people getting like disproportionate amount of trouble for the crime, like some possession of weed or some small amount of drugs that's not really even hurting anyone besides potentially themselves. And then like any amount of jail time, even if it's like 1 month for drug use, is insane. Like, yeah, I don't know, like, because like you're putting people in, like, if you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with, that's like that old rule. But if you're hanging out with a bunch of neo-Nazis and pedophiles and like, chomos and whatever the fuck it is that they have in jail, like, you're probably gonna come out pretty fucked up, especially when you're young and impressionable.
The whole purpose of prisons and the police has been subverted by the war on drugs. Because if you arrest a rapist, that person has fucking raped someone. If you arrest a murderer, that's the person has murdered someone. A thief has robbed from someone. There's always person A harming person B. If you arrest a kid with weed, who's that kid harming?
Yeah.
It's just that the purpose of prisons is to take people out of society who are harming other people. To protect society from those people.
Yeah, man, it's a joke. Yeah. Crazy shit. Yeah, one of the depressing realities of the current thing. Do you think so you think Scandinavian countries have the best system when it comes to prison?
Well, they've got the lowest reoffending in the world, but whenever we look at the Scandinavians in the UK or the Americans, then the public says, what? You're going to give pedophiles job skills and let them have luxuries? And that's how they shut it down. And the politicians are so scared of appearing to be soft on crime that they're going to lose votes, that they keep the status quo. But they're getting paid off anyway by the private prisons to keep it the way it is. Prison guards unions are the ones who lobbied for the 3 strikes law in California. It was going to get kicked out because you had guys who'd stolen a pizza, serving 25 to life, costing 50, 60,000 a year to the taxpayers. So over $1 million for a guy who stole a $10 pizza. They tried to repeal it, and guess who stopped it from getting repealed was Broadcom, exclusive provider of telephone services to the California state prison system. And the prison guards union had brought it in the first place by giving the governor of California $1 million political contribution.
Yeah, man, that shit is nuts. I do remember when they were trying to legalize weed in California the first time in 2010 before it passed. This was when I was contemplating moving out to Cali when I was in Boston. One of the biggest contributors to it not passing was the prison guard union. So they were the ones pushing to keep it illegal, which, you know, makes sense once you like take all this into account.
Yeah, let's just put kids in prison so we can make money off the back of them and turn them into Nazis.
Crazy shit. Do girls secretly get turned on when they found out your drug dealer is a drug dealer game legit? The first part of the question: do girls secretly get turned on when they found out you were a drug dealer back in those days?
Well, not being a girl, I wouldn't know if, you know, the secret, if I was secretly getting turned on or not. But as I'd refer this person to how I answered it earlier, because I got to be careful what I say because of the trolls and everything, and the campaigns against me. And what I would say is that from my own personal experience, what I think I had in my favor was I was a successful entrepreneur. You know, I'm running shit. If you're running shit, people look up to that and respect it, male and female. I had a lot of money. I had an English accent. I had that going for me. And I was behaving wild and crazy, you know, like drug-fueled rock star behavior. So yeah, I was a character in the night scene, definitely. And if you're a character, if you're larger than life, that, you know, that attracts attention as well.
Gotcha. This is an interesting question. Do you find the quality of your product very much, and the quality progressively gone down or up? So I know you mentioned in other interviews that you were like pretty strict on quality because you didn't want anyone to overdose on your supply, which is respectable, obviously. So I guess it went up, right? Like the quality of existing.
One of the founders of Microsoft, I believe, funded a website called DanceSafe. I don't know if it's still going these days, but it was back then. And with DanceSafe, you could buy testing kits for ecstasy. And also they had a page on it whereby all the latest pills that were doing the rounds, they tested them themselves and they put their ingredients on the website. So my smugglers all took testing kits to Holland. So a good pill should be 100, 125 milligrams of MDMA and clay, usually a pale beige press. It turns the chemical purple blue in the testing kit. And yeah, we had a good reputation. So when the Bulls crew came around with their colored pills and they tried to recruit me to sell their stuff, I told them no, I didn't want to go down that road because I had a good reputation as it was. And that's one of the things that caused the beef that led to my top sales guy getting his teeth knocked out by those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the scariest things to me, like I would consider myself like a very, very recreational, like once in a blue moon type of certain drug user. But one of the scariest things to me, one of the reasons I haven't done like really much drugs in the last 5 years is the idea that you can put shit in the drugs that you don't know about, and that's what kills you. So like with coke, fentanyl, right? Like it's not the coke usually that's killing the people, it's the fentanyl. So that to me was always like the scariest, like the biggest motivator to like not do drugs, because I'm like, you know, I'm not worried about doing the line of blow. I'm worried about the shit that's in it that could kill me, right? So, and that's becoming a big problem nowadays, correct?
Yeah, I mean, how successful are drug laws? That every single year drugs get stronger, more prolific, and there's more violence around the world by people competing for the black market created by drug laws than ever. From 500,000 dead in Mexico to all the knife crime in London, this all revolves around the black market and drugs created by drug laws. I interviewed a psychiatrist out of Canada recently. He said, due to all the deaths in fentanyl in my area, I wish we could go back to the good old days of heroin. So how bad has it got to get before the government reverses the drug laws and the war on drugs? It's absolutely sickening. All these people are dying, but these fuckers are making money off the back of it.
Yeah, man. This is an interesting question. How easy was it for inmates to get their hands on drugs? Prison sounds like a poor choice for someone with self. So you're saying it's like extremely easy to get drugs in jail, right?
The guards are bringing it in. The staff are bringing it in. The nurses are bringing it in. The illegal black market in drugs, they estimate, is worth up to $1 trillion a year. The money flows one way, the drugs flows the other. Every profession that money comes into contact with, there are some members of that profession that will be corrupted. So there's going to be corrupt guards, cops, judges, prosecutors, and it doesn't matter who's arrested. Chapo, Escobar, Cali, the drugs always keeps flowing and the situation gets worse every year. And the economist Milton Friedman wrote to George H.W. Bush. He said this was going to happen. The cartels, the violence, and George H.W. Bush completely ignored them.
How are the prisoners getting money? Like, because you're not working in prison, or if you are, you're not making anything. Like, how's the money flowing that way if there's like the prisoners aren't making any money?
Street to street. So say you're my heroin dealer in prison and I owe you $1,000. My girlfriend on the streets pays your girlfriend on the streets.
Oh, okay. So it's like a communication code. Okay, got it. So you basically need, but so if that's the case, you need to have connections outside of jail in order to do drugs, right? Because like let's say you're like one of those people that pissed everyone off, right? Then how do you do drugs in jail if you have like no one on the outside to help you?
These days, they've got phones, they've got online banking. It's way more advanced than when I was inside. If there's a situation that needs to be resolved to do with drug payments, there's collective intelligence of prisoners is going to shine. And there's so much wasted talent in prison. And you see it at moments like this, how innovative they are about getting the drugs in, hiding the drugs, corrupting the guards. It's fucking genius.
Let me ask you this question. I'm curious to get your opinion on this. There's two ideas about El Chapo. One is that he's completely isolated and cut off, and two is that he's secretly still running shit. Which one do you think it is?
He never was running shit. It is the guy, what's his name? Mencho was running the Sinaloa cartel. So Chapo was the figurehead for the war on drugs, for the bogeyman. America needs a bogeyman. And I think it's Mencho is his partner. I'm going to have to research that. Mencho's either the rival cartel head or the head of the Sinaloa cartel. But there's a brilliant YouTube channel called OG Shadow, and he reports on all of this. So yeah, Chapo was extremely powerful in the Sinaloa cartel. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he was a nobody. He was extremely powerful, but he was not the boss. The boss is still out there, and he's been out there for a long time. And these guys get a pass. Like Caro Quintero got released from prison. He's running shit again. He got a pass. If you watch Marcos Mexico.
I mean, I saw that crazy clip of El Chapo's son getting arrested in Mexico and then being released like an hour later. You know I'm talking about that clip where El Chapo's son was just walked out of like police custody. You know what I'm talking about?
So yeah, I do know what you're talking about. So what happened was that they basically told the cops that they would get killed and kill their family members and stuff like that, and they had to release him. So when El Chapo got arrested, the head of the Sinaloa cartel, Chapo's sons, went to war with the head of the Sinaloa cartel to try and take it over. So Mencho is the head of the Jalisco cartel. I'm trying to get the name of the head of the Sinaloa cartel here, but it's not coming up.
It's all good, yeah.
Yeah, Sinaloa cartel head, but OG Shadow really breaks it down. Oh yeah. El Mayo, yeah. So you've got Ismael Zambada, El Mayo Zambada. And he's been running the Sinaloa cartel for decades, but there's a war for control with El Chapo's kids. But he's got a pass, man. Just like they let Caro Quintero out. These guys work with the authorities for a period of years. Well, I've only got a couple more minutes left, Alex. So is there any more questions?
Yeah, let's take like one more. This is an interesting one. Do you think you learned something about how to turn a channel, the rockstar persona, once you experience? Okay, so the question is, do you think you would have been able to be as charismatic and as confident as you are if it wasn't for the whole ecstasy phase of your life? Like, do you think you would have been able to do this without that that Kingpin aspect of your life?
Good grief, that's a complex question, isn't it? It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
it is.
I've never been asked that before. I really appreciate that. Um, so my behavior now is mellow compared to the drug-fueled insanity. We called it the circus when we were partying like that, and I just think that, like I said earlier, I'm really privileged and honored that people are still so interested in my story after all these years, and I think that's part of the fascination, perhaps, that draws people to my channel, because I'm not the average podcast host. I can interview someone, for example, John Elite, hitman for the Gambino crime family, with Wildman next to me before he died, as people who've been in the lifestyle. And you see people who've been in the lifestyle opening up to us more, and perhaps more pertinent questions to ask. So I think it just brings a different dimension, and not just with the ex-cons, but like Robert Greene, for example. I interviewed him recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and off the bat, I said, look, here's how Wildman behaved when he went in prison, and here's how I behaved, and how I adopted the 48 laws, and how he adopted the 48 laws. Wildman was, defeat your enemy completely. So when the AB came up to him and said, what you're in for, he just knocked the fucking guy out. They went away and said, look, you shouldn't have done that. We're going to find out who you are. There's going to be consequences. They went away. They came back. They offered Wildman the guy's job.
Oh, shit.
Versus me, who was, diplomatic and tried to use my education. And I also told Robert Greene that that his book was banned in the Arizona Department of Corrections as well. So we struck it off right away. So he's probably used to, your average person who interviews him. But I think because I've been through such extreme situations in my life, perhaps that's part of the draw to my channel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, man, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I think you're, I really enjoy your content, and I want other people to check it out. So where can you have several books out? You have a channel. Where should people find you?
Yeah, if people want to sub to my channel, it's just under my name, Shaun Attwood, SHAUN Wood. All my socials are under my name, and all my books are available worldwide in Amazon and all formats under my name as well. I've got 15 books out, written a series of books on the war on drugs, series of books on Pablo Escobar, and my life story is a trilogy as well. It's party time, hard time, prison time. And I want to thank you, Alex. You're a really good vibe. I love your energy.
Thanks,
And
man, for sure.
it's so important what you're doing. When people brush all this sexual stuff under the carpet, it creates massive dysfunction in society, and people need to be more open-minded about things. And and as my channel has grown, I used to tell some pretty racy stories, and the trolls dig them up and stuff, and I've had to become more conservative with my vernacular. But I think people should be able to talk openly about sex. It's it's crazy that there's all this suppression out there, and these people who are saying, who are trying to suppress it and censor it and shut people down. What is wrong with these people? Do they want these abnormalities to occur in society? What is it? What is motivating them to be sexually repressive? They act like the kids have got to be protected from hearing this and things like that. But I think it's just moralistic hypocrisy and bullshit. And some of the dominatrixes that I've interviewed said these moral people in society who are putting the laws down on people like cops and judges, they come to them. They're their regular clients, and they're the kinkiest people out there. So, yes, end the hypocrisy. We should have open discussions about things. Things shouldn't be stigmatized, because it creates bigger problems in the long run. So it's great what you're doing, man. I salute you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, the hypocrisy is insane. I mean, it's usually like you said, like the guys who were the biggest homophobes in prison were the guys that were like banging the trannies. Like that is literally, it's almost always like it's the guys who talk the biggest shit. It's like like the social justice warriors, like they're coming out like, what you're doing is so disgusting. You're telling guys how to sleep with women. That's so gross. And then you find out like someone's like, yo, man, like this chick likes to get pissed and shit on. Like it's just like you see stuff like that, and it's just like. The hypocrisy is insane. I think people are massive hypocrites. If I can make the world a little bit less hypocritical, that's a good thing. And, yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, cheers, brother.
And,
you take care.
Yeah, man. We'll stay in touch, for sure, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
All right, take care, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time.